So chapter 6 is functions. It matches chapter 5 back in your CPS
DFR,
121 class.
excise taxes.
Instead of being called functions, they were called methods. And going back some languages ago, they were called procedures. But all of these were that little block of code that we were able to break down into manageable parts. You got the whole idea. Going a little more depth, we have this whole divide and conquer idea where we take a big problem and say, go do this, go do that, go do this. And you should have seen something about hierarchy chart. What's new? Bingo, right here. These prototypes. Hang on one second. I'm going to do that. These prototypes were new, okay, where we actually do some defining. And I'm going to say, as you're doing programs, early on, these are tricky, especially when we get to chapter 9, especially when we start talking about passing as a reference variable and how we set all of that up. And we've seen reference variables a little bit, but I'd keep my book close. And when we do our group work today, somebody in the group or two people in the group should actually have a book close. You should be remembering that you did the code listings, and something should almost sound familiar with the code list. So, what's new? That's day 2, what we're getting into. And in some of the code listings, you should have seen some of these things like what's a global variable? And, when we worked with functions inside of a function, we had a local variable. And when we left the scope, it was gone. Okay. We would have some in the main that we'd have to pass in or wouldn't go in. But instead, this code listing 17, we actually are doing the prototype for our function, but we're also creating something that is a global variable. And you see, I made a note in my book. It goes before the main. Otherwise, it would just be a variable in the main that could only be accessed in the main. But this global variable could be accessed throughout your program, and it could get messy. You could be putting it in there and then try to define a num down somewhere else, and you could get sloppy and it could be all over the place. But this is something new, something different from Java. What else? We have a static variable. Where is it? There it is. Where it is? There it is. It's a local variable that keeps its value inside of the function. And if I jump over to code listing 22, finally that word static starts to make a little sense. So by this being static, its scope stays for the whole program. Like before, if I just said int stat num when I left, there was no int stat num ever again. But by making it static, I could I could have a counter for how many times I entered this procedure. Every time I'd enter, I'd add 1. Okay, which is what's going on here. Every time I enter, I'm adding 1 to it. So this word static, you're going to see static again and again and again now that we're finally have a little idea of what it is and how to use it. We're going to see things like static functions, static, or lots of static down the road. But here's the first instance of you seeing static, and it stays alive even after you leave the function. Default arguments. This was something that we didn't have in Java that you may decide you want to use. And here we go. I have 3 calls to the function display stars. This one defaults. It's coming down. I have no idea what cols and rows could be. Here I'm calling it with only 1 value going over, and that would go into columns. And here I'm passing in 7 and 3. Back in our day, we couldn't, oh boy. Do you notice I have default values. So when this first one is called, columns is going to be 10, rows is going to be 1. Second one, columns is going to be 5. I overwrite this, and rows is going to be 1. Again, something different that you did not see in Java that, oh, there it is. What else do we have? This is a big one. Okay, this is a big one. Passing by reference. And I don't know if you've ever seen people with those little sticky arrow things that they paste on a page and then it sticks part way out. Well, this would be a big one. Program 626 is a big one. Now, I would have this ready frequently until I totally learned how to do it. In my prototypes, I'm declaring 2 functions. Each one of them is going to pass an integer, but it's passing an integer as a reference variable, which means I'm going to send something in. And what is it I'm sending in? The seven letters, starts with A. This guy is, yes, thank you, Tanner. This is sending in the address. So when it comes back, it's going to still be the address. But when it went in, the address, I can go to the address and make changes, and the changes will stick. But the actual address is coming back. Okay. So I'm passing in the address to an int. That's 4 bytes long. Address to an int. I'm going to receive the address and then make changes. So the first thing is make sure you get your type and let it know that it's a reference variable. You're going to be able to get the address. All right. Coming down here, get user number. You notice this is a void function. I'm bringing in the address and I'm saying we're going to call it user num. This is actually going to go to user num and make a change and stick. Didn't change the address goes back. But when I go to use user num, so I could actually finally say instead of we have a void method and a single value returning method, I could have a whole bunch of these reference variables where I'm sending in addresses and I could make changes to multiple variables inside of my function. Something I couldn't do before. This is awesome. This gets a big red star. 100% needed. Chapter 9, we're going to get into a lot of stuff with addresses. But for right now, I need to get straight that this is the data type, like it always was, and that I'm going to use the address. Down here is going to be the data type and the name that I'm going to use for that address. Oh boy. So here, step 1, get num. Here, step 2, get num. Here, step 3, keeping those 3 lines straight in your head. Get num, get num. Oh, actually, this one's user num. But how it is in the prototype, how it is when I make the call, and how it is in the function name. I don't need an ampersand. You got it straight? We're going to practice that today. So hopefully that'll be like, okay, I remember. He said page 357. What's the sum of 3 consecutive odd integers that add to 15? 3, 5, and 7. So this is all big. Again, it's an int passing by your address. Overloading functions. Overloading functions. Well, let's see. A function that has the same name but different signatures. Same name but different signatures? Sure. Code listing 627. It's overloaded. I have a function called square, and I have a function called square. Back in 121, you did at the beginning of your classes, right? And we're looking back at a class, we had constructors, and we would have more than one constructor. They were overloaded. I have more than one function called square. It's overloaded. When I pass in an integer, it knows to use this one. When I pass in a double, it knows to use this one. So here I'm asking the user for an integer and so on and so on. Do they look almost the same? Yep. Yep. Check this one out. Square int number. Okay, we got that from above. Yeah, that's kind of double square double number. Okay, that's kind of cool. What if I wanted to make something instead of written this way? I made it a void function and brought in a reference variable. I'm bringing in the address. I'm going to that address and squaring it. And when I go back, these two are actually interchangeable. All right. Test question. Next week, next Wednesday is the test. So on chapters 1 through 6. So this week you kind of get to practice your chapter 6 stuff. Next week we start chapter 7 on Monday, but next Wednesday is your first test on chapters 1 to 6. I don't know. I can't do much more than I know. The cat likes that. Got the idea of overloading, square and square. Got the
Yes,
idea of
sir.
yes.
And that underneath the void square in reference number, the number is that times or equal or both?
This number times equals number. Again,
Okay.
that is shortcut for number equals number times number. Okay? This is short for that. You notice I don't have a return because it's void, but this is getting changed and I'm changing it at the address. Are you saying my handwriting's sloppy? Because I say it all the time.
I've seen worse.
Okay. Okay. So more and more and more and more we do hands-on things. Finish minimum wage on D2L. So I'm going to go over to D2L. I'm going to see chapter 6 minwage.cpp and I'm going to get that open and I'm coming back to you all and I'm going to share it and here it is. You got it? Okay. This is how we do it. This is a program that's going to talk about minimum wage. I gave you the prototypes, lines 13 to line 18. I gave you the main. You need in your group to do the 6 functions. Okay, so let's see what's going on here. I got a program, and I don't know if you can see my window as well or not, but the first function, line 13, min wage, does the user make minimum wage or not? You're going to enter a character Y or N for yes or no. Notice it's using that idea of a reference variable. Get info. Okay. Line 14 and line 16 are both called get info. The first one, I already, does the user make minimum wage? They said yes. So down in line 36, I'm going to get info, which is going to ask for the number of hours they work. Then I'm going to send that hours over to calc pay so it can calculate my pay. And I already know that its minimum wage is $15. So if I look at Line 14, get info. I'm going to go find out the number of hours. Then I'm going to use calc pay, which is line 15, where I'm going to do the hours times the $15 an hour and calculate the pay. If it's not minimum wage, when you do line 16, which corresponds to 41, you're going to be asking the user for the number of hours worked and what their wage is. Then in line 42, you're going to do the second calc pay where you send both of those in and you will be able to display the calculate pay. The final thing is get rerun val. Line 18, you're going to have a function called get rerun val. Would you like to run again? Please enter yes, enter Y for yes or N for no kind of deal. So I have reference variables at the HUA and I have overloaded functions. Now, I know what you would do. You'd love to start going to town real quick. Hours, 30. Minimum wage, 15. $450. Hours, 50. Minimum wage. Well, the first 40 is times 15. Agreed? Oh, Jumai says 750. Does anybody agree with that? So this is going to be how much? 40 times 15. 600. And then I have 10 hours of overtime. 10 times the 15 or 1.5 times 15. What does that equal? 10 hours at time and a half is this. 10 times 1.5 is 15. 15 squared is 225. I think I got 825. Somebody say yes, no, wrong. You're stupid. Give me something.
I'm impressed you can do that all in your head.
I've been doing math for a while. What if it's not minimum wage? 30. They make $20 an hour. That should be easy, 600. And 50 at $20 an hour is not minimum wage. Forty times 20 is 80, 800. 10 times 1.5 times 20 is 300. 1100. You cool with that? Do you now have test data when you're ready to run your program? Yeah. What if my hours was 0? Doesn't always hurt to make sure that comes out to be 0, right? This is minimum wage. Minimum wage, yes. Minimum wage, no. Minimum wage, yes. Questions? Questions? All right, once again, here's the program. You do not have to touch lines 1 to 52. You don't have to touch any of them. What you have to do is write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 functions. And again, keeping straight, line 13, char ampersand. Good. Line 32, min wage, letter. And then what's my function heading going to look like?